Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roach Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. The transfer portal in college basketball is starting to wind down, but one team that is not done in the transfer portal is the Arizona Wildcats, because they just landed former San Diego State forward Keshad Johnson. I'm going to go over whether I think Keshad Johnson could be a key part of Arizona's team next season, and whether I think Arizona is possibly going to be the best team in the Pac-12 next season. Now, looking at Keshad Johnson as a player, he spent the last 4 years with the San Diego State Aztecs, and he had some success. He never was a star, and he never was the best player on the team by far, but he still was a key contributor. In this past season, he definitely played the biggest role that he had ever played so far, where he averaged 7.7 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 0.7 assists, and he shot 53% from the field, which is a really solid percentage. Only 26.2% from threes. Not a great three-point shooter, but Brian Dutcher, the San Diego State head coach, gave him the green light to shoot the ball, and even though he didn't connect at a high rate, he still helped space the floor for the Aztecs when needed, and he only shot 64.8% at the free throw line. So he's not a great shooter all around, but he still is a key impact player for the Aztecs, and he was a big reason in helping San Diego State go as far as they did in the NCAA tournament and go all the way to the national championship game. So even though Keshad Johnson's a guy that only averages around 7 points per game, and he's probably not going to be a guy that has a much bigger role on the Arizona Wildcats, where he could potentially up his points to over 10 points per game, he's still a solid player, and having that NCAA tournament experience going all the way to the national championship game, I think will be huge, and the fact that he is going to be a fifth-year senior as well. He's already graduated, so he's an older guy, a very experienced player in college basketball. This is a great addition for Arizona, even if Keshad Johnson doesn't start, which he could start for Arizona, barring some other moves that could possibly be made for the Wildcats. But this is a big addition for Arizona as well, because the Wildcats have a lot of roster flux going on right now, and they are a team that has a lot of question marks, but the Wildcats look like a team that could possibly be the Pac-12 favorite next year. I know USC fans think the Trojans will easily be the front runners in the Pac-12 next season because they got Bronny James, Isaiah Collier, Boogie Ellis, and a really talented roster around them, but I definitely would not count out Arizona because they have a lot of experience, especially if Azuolas Tubelis does return. Azuolas Tubelis is still testing the NBA draft waters. He's the only player that still has a pending decision for Arizona. But if Azuolas Tubelis will return for Arizona, I think that automatically makes Arizona the top team in the Pac-12, at least in the preseason, for college basketball next season, because of the fact they're going to have the most experience on their roster of any team in the Pac-12. UCLA's losing a lot of talent. I think they will take a step back. Still be toward the top of the Pac-12, but they should take a step back. Arizona State could be solid, but I don't know how good they're going to be. But USC and Arizona are the front runners right now. But if Azuolas Tubelis comes back as talented as he is, the 6'11" forward that has NBA draft aspirations, he could be a second-round pick. But if he comes back for Arizona, which I actually think he should because of the fact he could improve in some areas for Arizona next season, maybe step out a little bit, start shooting the basketball a little bit more from the outside, he could really improve his draft stock if he returns for Arizona. But if he does return, I think Arizona will be the front runner next season because they've also got Colin Boswell back. He will be their point guard next season because Kirk Creese, he's out. The transfer portal, it gives and it takes away. Kirk Creese is gone, but Colin Boswell, a really talented player that was a guy that reclassified for Arizona this past season. He's still a really young player. He should be a freshman this year. I think he will definitely step up for Arizona this season as the new starting point guard because he was really starting to play better down the stretch of this past season. Courtney Ramey and Cedric Henderson, they're both gone. They're both out of eligibility, but all is not lost because Arizona already brought in through the transfer portal Jaden Bradley, a former McDonald's All-American 5-star recruit that was on Alabama's team this past season. He averaged around 6 points per game this past year, and I know that he averaged less than Keshad Johnson did this past season, but I feel like Jaden Bradley's a guy that will definitely take a step forward because he's a really talented player that just needs more time to shine, and Arizona is a place that can give him playing time because Alabama had a lot of guards this past season that were really good, but Arizona, they need guards, and Jaden Bradley, I think, could be the answer there. Pell Larson, he was testing the NBA draft waters, but he's back, and he's a really solid player that has NBA aspirations. Why he was testing the waters, but he's a guy guy that was really solid this past season, and he's one of Arizona's more experienced players, and I think he should be really solid this next season for Arizona. KJ Lewis is a 4-star recruit coming in. He's a 6'4" guard. I think he might be the 6th man off the bench, at least in the backcourt for Arizona next season. He has a lot of talent, could potentially step up next season for the Wildcats. And Umar Ballo, he's back. He's the center for Arizona this past year. He's a beast down low. He's a really tough player to defend because he is a big, wide body. And again, if Azuolas Tubelis returns, that front court will be loaded for Arizona. You could have Azuolas Tubelis and Umar Ballo in the front court, and then have the 3 guards in the backcourt, Colin Boswell and Jaden Bradley, the Alabama transfer, and then Pell Larson, and that will be a really good starting 5. But even if Azuolas Tubelis does leave, there are options at the 4 for Arizona, like Keshad Johnson. And I think another big reason why it was huge for Arizona to land Keshad Johnson is because of the fact they got him over the Kentucky Wildcats, the USC Trojans, the Oklahoma Sooners, and the Texas Tech Red Raiders in the transfer portal. All those schools were looking at him. And I think that Keshad Johnson chose Arizona over the Kentucky Wildcats because of the fact Keshad Johnson said NIL is not a factor for him. Whether NIL does matter to him at any extent or not, it wasn't his biggest reason for transferring. He wants to be at a team where he feels like he can have the most success possible, where he can showcase his talents in his last year of college basketball while having success on a great team next year. And I think Arizona checks all the boxes for Keshad Johnson because of the fact that also he's from Oakland, California. So that's why he went to San Diego State, was in-state, and now he's in Arizona, which is not that far away from California. USC would have been a viable option, but DJ Rodman, Dennis Rodman's son, went down and joined the famous Parents Club down at USC, and that filled up the spot Keshad Johnson could have filled at the Trojans next year. And even though it's a tough blow to the Kentucky Wildcats that have had some really bad news in the last day or two, with Lance Ware transferring to Villanova and now Keshad Johnson spurning the Kentucky Wildcats and choosing the Arizona Wildcats, Kentucky's losing out both to the Villanova Wildcats and the Arizona Wildcats, but they still should be fine for next season. They've got a really talented freshman class. But for Arizona, even though they've got KJ Lewis coming in, a really good 4-star guard, and they also have a 7'2" center from Europe in Matijas Krivas, he could potentially be a talented player in the future for Arizona. He's a raw talent, but he could really improve behind Umar Ballo, potentially Azuolas Tubelis if he does return. But Arizona needed Keshad Johnson, because even if Azuolas Tubelis does return, Keshad Johnson will be huge off the bench for Arizona next season. If Azuolas Tubelis does not return, Keshad Johnson could be the starting 4. Now, Arizona, pending a decision from Arthur Kaluma, they could land him in the transfer portal as well. If Azuolas Tubelis does leave, I think Arthur Kaluma could transfer to Arizona, and then Keshad Johnson could come off the bench. But if Arthur Kaluma does not transfer to Arizona and Azuolas Tubelis doesn't return, Keshad Johnson could be the starting 4. And I really think that even if Keshad Johnson's coming off the bench, he will be satisfied in his role because he just wants to be on a winning team and to be able to showcase his talents. And Tommy Lloyd, he's a great coach. He's doing great things. He's bringing in talented players year after year to Arizona, continuing what Sean Miller did and Lute Olson back in the past. I think Arizona's in great shape for next season. USC, they've got the talent. They've got DJ Robin. They've got Bronny James. They've got the famous players' sons, and they've also got Isaiah Collier and Boogie Ellis. I think they'll be a really good team, and they've got some other good players as well. And I do think as it stands that both USC and Arizona will be the top 2 teams in the Pac-12 next season, and USC will have a great chance to win the league in their own right. Arizona, to me, has the more experience. USC is the upside, but Arizona has the player experience to have success. And Keshad Johnson, a player that went to the national championship game this past season with the San Diego State Aztecs, his experience alone is a good addition for Arizona. I think he's going to want to play really hard in his last season of college basketball. And to be able to land him over the Kentucky Wildcats and the USC Trojans shows the pull Arizona has. Even if NIL isn't the biggest reason, they just are a winning team. And Keshad Johnson wants to be on a winning team. So I'm really liking what Arizona's bringing back. They've got a potentially great starting 5 in Colin Boswell, Jaden Bradley, Pell Larson, Azuolas Tubelis if he does return, Umar Ballo, and then maybe guys like Keshad Johnson and KJ Lewis coming off the bench. But we'll have to see what Azuolas Tubelis does. But as is, I like the Arizona roster. They might not be the deepest team in the country for next season in college basketball, but they have one of the best starting 5s potentially if Azuolas Tubelis does return. But I like Keshad Johnson's addition. I like the fact he wants to be on a winning team and have a lot of success to be able to showcase his talents. Hopefully Tommy Lloyd can provide that for Keshad Johnson, and if Keshad Johnson steps up and maybe shoots the ball a little bit better from 3, around 30% from 3, maybe 33% at the max, would be really huge for Arizona. And if he can just be a good player on the glass, he's a good rebounder as well, and be a tough glue guy for Arizona next season, I think it will really go a long way in helping the Wildcats, the Arizona Wildcats, have a chance to win the Pac-12 next season in college basketball. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about Keshad Johnson transferring to the Arizona Wildcats over Kentucky, USC, and other schools, and whether you think Keshad Johnson Johnson could be a quality addition for Arizona next season. How good of a job you think Tommy Lloyd is doing in the transfer portal this offseason for Arizona. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.